Hello and welcome to the Zone Monthly. This is the month of June 2023. And it is June already in 2023. I feel like just the other day was Christmas and time is flying by. Speaking of time, we are approaching our 1 year mark. XETA Capital 1 year anniversary. That will be on July 22nd, the evening of July 22nd. You can even say the 23rd, but we're going to go with the 22nd because later in that evening. But it would depend on your time zone, of course, and where you are in the world. Very few projects are around 1 year later in crypto. Of course, we are more than just a project. We're a business with products underneath us, like a proper business is structured. But nonetheless, being around 1 year in the cryptocurrency space, whether that's DeFi, TradFi merged, or any other facet is an achievement, because the vast majority of businesses, projects, products that launch in the space that are around a quarter later, 6 months later, even that's rare. To be around a year later and to still be going strong is even more rare. And it's just a testament to how well we are built, designed, and the utility that exists. So we have some interesting statistics on the screen. Before I get into that, just want to welcome, we have a lot of new users that have joined Discord and have just overall joined the community. Some are asking questions. Some of them aren't really sure how the system works and they're still learning. Others are just getting started. Others have been here for a little bit. Regardless of where you are on your journey, I want to thank you for joining us. Thank you for just coming in and learning more. Even if you choose not to participate, still appreciate you coming in and asking questions and just trying to learn more about who we are, what we do, and how we work. So can't read your names because there's too many of you that are new, but saying thank you so much for taking an interest in XETA Capital and welcome to our community. So I'm going to go off of some overall bullet points here that you'll see on the right side. Of course, if you're listening and you're not watching on Spotify or any other non-video medium, you're not going to see what I'm talking about. Would encourage you to go and check out our YouTube, go and check out our Twitter page. We have a Discord community. And of course, this will be uploaded to YouTube so you can follow along in video format if you'd like. But I'll go through these bullet points nonetheless. The charity wallet. So currently, we have a 1% additional transaction cost on top of all OTC sales. When a sale takes place, somebody comes and purchases the tokens listed on OTC. There's a 1% additional added to that, which then goes to the James Project, which is an amazing charity, and I would recommend you go and check them out at jamesproject.org. They do wonderful work for abused women and children in South America. And currently, so we applied that 1% additional on, I believe it was May 4th. It was early May. Well, the OTC smart contract wallet is holding just under $43,000. Those are the additional 1% that is going to go to donate to James Project. And that's going to be on top of what is in the charity wallet, $16,000. So we're sitting just under $60,000, that we'll be able to donate to. And that's going to be an amazing donation. That's going to do so much work for them. And I'm going to do an update with James Project at some point this year. I don't have that on the books yet scheduled, but if you want to know more about them, check out our YouTube channel. I did an interview with Tiffany last year. They do wonderful work, and if you want to consider donating to them individually, please check out their website and do so. But that is a testament to the volume that we have, because when that 1% was added, 43,000 is just about 4.3 million in volume just in the last 2 months. So that's something to bear in mind as an unbelievable number. And then we had the Uncharted NFT airdrop number 2, quarter 2. The Uncharted NFTs, if you didn't get any, I believe they are still available on a third-party NFT websites. I believe OpenSea has some. Make sure you're buying them legitimately if you do so. But nonetheless, that was the second airdrop. Those original NFTs from Uncharted will most likely be the best offering via an NFT, at least of that unique fashion, with that high of ceiling return that will exist, whereby they are backed by the HFT services with Zeta Capital. So if you got one of those, congratulations, you are just going to continue getting those airdrops. And of course, we kind of maintained the Zeta token value at $75. That was the tokenomic and economic goalposts that we had when we moved to OTC only. And of course, if you don't know, that matches the pre-sale price. So anybody who felt like they missed out at that early value is now right back to where we started 1 year later. And it was actually at this point last year we were involved in the pre-sale at that exact price. So there you go. And of course, because we are coming up on the 1 year anniversary, guess what's going to happen? So in our system, zones that have emissions, unlike other emission-based systems that exist in DeFi or in crypto in general, ours expire after 1 year. There are other systems that don't expire, and it's an infinite problem that never goes away. But nonetheless, we are coming up on the first expiration of zones. So all of the pre-sale zones, and this is even more impactful. So starting July 22nd of this year, the evening of July 22nd this year, the first zones will begin to disappear into the ethosphere of the universe to go with our space theme. And those first batches that will disappear are going to be the ones that have the most emissions. If you recall, if you were in the pre-sale here at Zeta Capital with Zeta Blue, then you had a pre-sale zone, and those pre-sale zones emit 0.12 instead of 0.1. So it was a benefit to buying them early. And those are going to be the first ones that will be pruned away, right? So starting July 22nd, we will now not just be adding zones, but we'll be removing zones every day, every hour as we go along, because obviously from July 22nd on, anybody who is building zones every day will now have those zones removed every day. So we'll be in a very different sort of position when it comes to emissions. And we're going to be living through the fruition of the actual system pruning itself. So that's going to begin July 22nd, and it will begin with the zones that have the most emissions at 0.12. Sad day to see the pre-sale zones go away, but good for the ecosystem. And because of that, we have a new FAQ. Please go and check that out, and it discusses how the expired zones work. Can you claim ahead of time? Can you overpay accidentally on your fees? Please go to our website at zetacapital.com. Go to the blog section, it'll be under news, and then read that FAQ. And also join our Discord, because when we post new articles, they're also announced in there as well. And that will answer all your questions. It will continue adding to the knowledge base as well. Let's get into some of our statistics in the month of June. So you're listening to this in July. The data for June is aggregated, and then we go over it the next month. So that's why we are in July. Talking about June. We have a zone growth of 17%. Financial service buybacks of 3.4 million. Financial service payouts was just under a million, actually just under 950,000, at 945,000. So those are service payouts from lakes, pools, etc. So those are the financial services you enter using your Zeta tokens, which then you get stablecoin on the other side. Total value locked is 34 million. That is in terms of zone value built and locked in the ecosystem. That is a lot of people say, what TVL, who cares? Well, it's actually more important than you think. Maybe, I wouldn't say more important than the others we're discussing, but it piggybacks on them, right? Because TVL is, the way I always look at it, is a determination of confidence. If you are locking $34 million worth of value, that means there's $34 million worth of value in confidence. That's kind of how I look at it. That's a lot. That's a lot to lock. You could settle as an OTC. You could do a lot of things, I suppose, a number of them, but they're locked, and they're locked so that the financial services can be accessed through increasing tiers. OTC buybacks is just under 400,000 at 387,000. That number is slightly lower only because of OTC being cleared out a number of times, not having to require buybacks for a couple of weeks. So that's pretty much half of June. Just a little FYI there. And the OTC volume was 1.6 million. And an interesting statistic is, if we introduced the 1% additional on OTC sales, right? And we did that early May. And we have about 43,000 sitting in there. We know we have about roughly 4.3 million in overall volume. So a little bit of a lower amount in June, but nonetheless, still in line with what has been so far, the ecosystem working in tandem with itself. So we had a couple of interesting statistics to go through in June in terms of zone growth. So you'll see, if you're watching, if you're not, I'll go through it, you're just listening. We had the most zones minted in a single day, the most zones minted by new wallets in a single day, and we surpassed 35,000 zones. Last year, I think we started with a little over 4,000 pre-sale zones. It's almost 10x the volume in growth, not in volume, excuse me, 10x a growth in zones just a year later, less than a year later, actually, almost. But we had on June 1st, we had 786 zones that were minted by new wallets. So these are new people coming in. These are not existing. And that's compared to 2 days after pre-sale of 704. Now, 2 days after pre-sale is not really an accurate statistic if you were to do a real comparison, only because everybody was new at that point. There were very few existing wallets. Everybody who built a zone right after the pre-sale was considered, air quote, new. So if we're going to compare new wallets minting the most zones in a single day, we did surpass that on June 1st, at 786 versus 704 from last year. And on the same day, this was a big growth day, we had 980 zones minted in total, right? And that surpassed by a large amount the most zones minted in a single day, which was the day after the pre-sale. So the day after the pre-sale last year, which would have been July 23rd, there were 779 zones minted in one day. So we surpassed that on June 1st, again, the same day, at 980. So just over 200 more. Of course, we surpassed 35,000 as well. Actually, we're sitting just under 40,000 at the moment. So monthly growth rate is 17%, 4% a week. 4% a week's on the slightly higher side. Usually we're a little lower than that, but nonetheless, 4% weekly average growth. And just under 60 basis points per day. These are average numbers, by the way. These are not every single day, but it's an aggregate, then taking an average of the month. With 5,813 zones added in the entire month, with 38,697 total zones in June. So this is by the end of June that these numbers are aggregated. So if you're listening or watching this in it's early or mid-July, whenever you get around to this, you think, oh, we're sitting at 40 or 45,000. What are they talking about? This is just the month of June. This is a month in June in a snapshot. So this is, again, very healthy, sustainable growth. And some people, I know that there's some folks who are like, they kind of pound the table. I can't get into lakes or pools, and maybe some frustration there. In a way, and hear me out on this, in a way that's a good thing, only because it actually means we have demand for our services. Why do we have demand for our services? We have demand for our services because the services work, and they make money, and they're unique. You're not going to find our services anywhere else. We are unique in that sense. So because the services work, because there's payouts, because it's functioning as designed, there's, of course, more and more demand. I had somebody message me saying, XETA seems to be getting a lot of traction lately. I said, well, yeah, it's because we're here almost a year later, and there's, announcements of lake airdrops, uncharted airdrops, pool payouts. We've got a gentleman that does weekly pool updates on Twitter. So all this stuff is getting out there. Oh my gosh, that's actually real. Yeah, it is. So the demand is there, and that's good. You want demand. You want people to participate and to see the fruits of that participation. So we're designing, obviously, you guys know, it's not a secret that 2.0 is being designed. It's taking Zeta Blue to the next level to kind of accommodate for this additional growth, to accommodate for people not being able to get in, because what I would hate more than anything, and this is the reason why tokens are always listed by the team on OTCs, because I always want there to be a supply for that demand. I would feel frustrated for people if demand was there but the supply couldn't keep up with it. So because of that, we are reworking some parts of Blue, which will have a name change, by the way. That's a little teaser. In order to accommodate for that additional growth, and we have, I'll tease this just a little bit, tease some things in the Discord, but we have some metrics that are going to be designed into the system that are going to be able to accommodate for all the emissions. As we stand right now, obviously, if we grow to a certain degree, by the time it's released, that'll have to be accounted for, which it should still be based on the math without any issues. But the point is, okay, here's all these emissions. And the emissions, by the way, equal tokens generated by zones, just so you know. We have all these emissions. There's only so many places for them to go. And it becomes sort of a vacuum. Either services, compound, OTC. I do understand that. So we want to do a couple of things. Number one, we want to provide options. I want people to have a lot of things to do with their tokens. I would like it if you guys had 10 things to do with your tokens, most of them being available all the time. I'm not saying there's going to be 10 things in 2.0, but there's going to be a whole lot more to do with your tokens. Some of them will be available 24/7. I've kind of teased that. And also provide a system for the financial services to eat up more tokens, stay open longer, and allow for hopefully everybody to participate so long as they're around, and not have it close in 5 minutes, right? So those are all being worked to accommodate for the growth. And again, these zones, and the reason I'm bringing this up now is because as the zones grow, as we had a slightly higher than average and normal weekly average growth rate in terms of zones, for the month of June, we want to be able to accommodate in the future for that growth. We can run the math just like you guys can, so we're fully aware of the mathematics behind that. And we want to accommodate and have a system designed that can say, okay, there's been a lot of people in since the pre-sale. A lot of these people have been in the services. Not everybody, but a lot of people have. But the newer people coming in are like, man, if I get to 75 zones, it's like really, really difficult to get in the pools and all this kind of stuff. So we get that. So we're going to accommodate for that. And more on that to come. So we went over TVL, total value locked. We surpassed $30 million. So again, this is in terms of value locked based on zones. What are those zones worth? And what decision was made by the end user to either choose to lock them up in terms of a zone, or to sell those tokens on OTC, or to go into the services. Obviously, going into the services is a byproduct of value being locked, because it typically means people are compounding to get to a higher tier. So we had 27% growth rate in June, with an average weekly growth rate of just under 7%, 6.8. The average daily growth is just under 1% at 92 basis points, or 0.92%. We added just under 7.5 million. And of course, we have 34 million in total. So again, these numbers, I view them as a gauge of confidence. If you have very, very low TVL a year later, that would obviously depend on your overall growth rate, because it is kind of part and parcel of the same statistic. If you have, in our system, zones are called zones. So if you were a company that had some other terminology, let's just say they weren't called zones, they were called something else, you can just pick the vernacular you want, and you had very slow growth, but you also had very low TVL a year later, I would say it's a measure of confidence. It means people are not confident in the product, and therefore they're not choosing to lock up their value in a zone, or whatever it is in that case. So that would tell me that people are electing not to do that, and they're electing to do something else. So every system is different, so that's maybe not so black and white, but the point being is that when you have a high zone growth a year later, and we're almost 10x, it will be more than 10x by the time July 22nd comes. We're already about 10x as I'm recording this. I think we're coming up on 40,000. Might have already hit it by the time I put this out. But nonetheless, that also determines the value locked. Different token price fluctuations can determine that, of course. But seeing as how we are OTC only and we have a programmable value, right, to give people the value inside the services, and kind of make that the primary beneficiary of that value, which is queue system with locked value, which allows the benefit to be those who elect to use the services. So all of that is determined in the value locked, which is, like I said, an overall measure of confidence, and 34 million is a lot of confidence. Speaking of OTC, we passed $9 million in lifetime OTC volume. Now, I'm going to tell you why that number is a little lower than it would be. And the reason is because when we first used Thor's OTC at the end of December 2022, we had the DEX going at the same time. So because of that, the OTC was only taking so much volume, right? And the people who didn't want to wait, at that time, it was probably no more than a day or two wait, if even that, a couple hours in most cases. People wanted to just go to the DEX. So a lot of the volume was still going over to the DEX, but the OTC was slowly overtaking it. So my point is, by the time we moved to OTC only, which was just in the middle of March, that's 2.5 months later, I assure you this would be probably 10 million. I'm going to venture to say that. The DEX would still on some days have between $50,000 and $100,000 of volume. A lot of that was arbitrage bots, and I understand that. But point being is in 2.5 months, you would have, I think in my opinion, conjecture of course, for sure would have passed 10 million. So nonetheless, 9 million in lifetime OTC volume. It's 9.1 actually in lifetime volume, but nonetheless, with 1.6 million in June, that's an average of $53,000 per day. And check this out, the lifetime tokens traded on OTC since inception, 138,000. That is a lot of tokens, 138,000 tokens, right? And remember, again, the value of that is going to be dependent on, at least for the first 2.5 months, what the DEX price was. Because if you recall, before OTC only, the DEX price was initiating the OTC price. They were matching each other for obvious reasons. And so, of course, because of that, when we look at 138,000 in lifetime tokens traded on OTC, we can't really extrapolate, the actual value on a set level. It's kind of fluctuating a little bit. So you could imagine if that was at $75, what that would be. I mean, you could do the math, of course, but nonetheless, that's, again, so a lot of people say, well, why wouldn't every project go to OTC? Well, the reason is because there's no project that has the kind of ecosystem and tokenomic structure that we have, where we literally buy back our own tokens from you and give you a position in something. That doesn't exist that I'm aware of. If it does, let me know. I'll go look at it. But because of that, we drive demand, and that demand allows for an OTC system to exist like this. All right. Even though I know some people don't like that it gets backed up a little bit, nonetheless, that's part and parcel of what some of the issues are going to be addressed in 2.0 as well. It's going to be, again, when I say that 2.0 is going to address the emissions in the services, it's also going to address the emissions in OTC as well. And it's going to have a system that works in concert together to allow for that supply and demand as we continue to grow. And coming up on a year, it's really the best time to do this because, like I said, now zones are going to be pruned. That pruning process begins, in less than 3 weeks? Just a little over 2 weeks from now, you'll see zones drop off. That's only going to help the system. And here's the thing. If you go back and you look, Ray does a great job at maintaining the Dune analytics. Thank you, Ray. It's in the statistics channel in our Discord. If you go back and look at some of that data from last year, every day you see zone growth from last year, that's going to be a zone decline now. So take those numbers if you are a math guy or a math gal and you want to run the math yourself. Otherwise, you can take my word for it if you want. I always encourage people to do their own due diligence. If you take those numbers and you run them in reverse, that's actually what the system's going to look like. Now, of course, there's still going to be growth, but that growth now will be not matched, but it will be challenged, I'll say, by zones dropping off. That's a big deal because now that's the full circle of the ecosystem pruning itself automatically. And that's before we roll out 2.0. That's going to prune the system and make it, accommodatable for new users that want to get into services and have, sort of an equal footing. OTC buybacks. Largest OTC buyback within a single day. We had the most OTC buybacks in a month, right? And as it's mentioned, I think I brought this up before, this is with OTC having been cleared out. I know it was cleared out at least once in June, early June, I believe. But it was cleared out just before that as well. And this is why I always tell people we have to list tokens to keep up with that demand. Now, somebody would say, well, my gosh, who would come and buy 15,000 tokens? Well, who would come and buy 8,000 or 5,000 in one go? That's happened how many times? I've lost count already. So anyway, that's a necessary sort of moving forward. But nonetheless, 387,000 in monthly buybacks. Over 5,100 tokens have been repurchased. And that puts us at a lifetime just under $1 million. And lifetime just under 14,000 tokens purchased. So $967,000 in lifetime buybacks on OTC, not even counting DEX and kind of what we were doing in concert with the OTC and the DEX. This is just since March 11th. It was the evening of March 11th. We didn't even do buybacks for the first 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, I think. Wasn't really necessary at that point. So, as people clear out OTC, obviously, specific buybacks as OTC fills back up are not necessary. So in this value, this lifetime buyback value for OTC, there's at least about 6 weeks where there were no buybacks at all, maybe even longer, might even been 6 to 8 weeks. So, almost half the time, if I was going to be honest, close to half the time, there has been no buybacks. So that's why you look at this number and you can extrapolate, okay, this is just a portion of the time. It's not even the entire time. Financial service buybacks, this is the juicy part. Lifetime total of $10 million in pool buybacks. $10 million in pools, guys. Lifetime value. Not in June, but lifetime value. Crazy. We had the highest volume of financial service buybacks in a single month in June. Okay? We had 1.9 million in pools. 1.5 million in lakes. Right? That brings us at 3.4 million just in June. Just in the month of June. We opened up 35 pools and 3 lakes. That puts us at a lifetime value of $14.4 million in buybacks. That $10 million was just a lifetime total goal that we surpassed. But at the end of June, we were sitting at $14.5 million, and there's already been several pools open since then. So right now, I can tell you, just based on when this is recorded, we are just under 15 million, but we're talking about the month of June, so we'll keep it there. $14.4 million in buybacks. So people will say, well, it's not real until you get paid out. Well, of course, nothing's real until you get paid out. You go invest in a mutual fund until you take out your profits, it's not real. If you go and invest in some sort of index fund and you make 10 to 12% a year, it's not real until you take it out, right? Of course, in those instances, you take it out, before a certain age, you get hit with a heavy tax. That's another conversation, but nonetheless, if you want to see people getting paid out, go into our Discord. Scroll around in the general chat and in the XETA chat and look at the images people post. You can literally filter by images, by the way. This is kind of a hack. You can filter by messages by images, and you can actually see the people posting their returns. And on top of that, you can see people who have taken withdrawals. There was a gentleman on Twitter, I don't remember his username, so I apologize. If you're that person, DM me. Showed that he took something like 15 withdrawals or something like that. And you can also, of course, see all the lake airdrops, right? You can see the uncharted airdrops, all on the blockchain. Blockchain doesn't lie. Of course, pool withdrawals come out of a hot wallet, so that's where users have to sort of opt to share or not share them. But nonetheless, we had a single user have the largest withdrawal last month. That was $150,000. It was a single user. So again, there's a compounding effect into this. So obviously you have to, not financial advice, but you have to pick and choose when you want to withdraw, when you want to keep it in there, how long, and all that kind of stuff. But nonetheless, this is real money being made by real people who need it for real life. Not just a project that is promising something it can't deliver, but a business that has a product that promises something and makes true on its commitments. That's really cool. So this is the bread and butter of what we offer. And this isn't even XETA Black, this is just Blue. And again, when we look at 2.0, you're gonna have more participants in this. You're gonna have more people being able to take advantage of this. And that is the overall goal, is to say, okay, these services work so well that there's an overabundance of demand. So we have to do something in order to keep up with that demand. That is our Zone Monthly, guys. I mean, if we were just to kind of summarize this up again, I just want to kind of summarize the entire thing, kind of end where we began, which is that we have 17% growth rate in the month of June. Just under 3.5 million in financial service buybacks. That's pools and lakes. Paid out $945,000 from those services. We have a total value locked in terms of zone value at $34 million, with $387,000 in OTC buybacks, with $1.6 million in volume in OTC for the month of June. We have a good sizable donation coming to the James Project very soon. We had the Uncharted airdrop, number 2 for the second quarter of 2023. We allowed the token price to move up and stopped it at $75 until future notice, where the economic and the tokenomic goal was, which brings us right back to the pre-sale price. And we have our very first zone pruning coming up. Starting July 22nd, the evening of July 22nd, you will begin to see zones fall off the map and disappear into the universe. Starting with the zones that have the most emissions at 0.12, those are the pre-sale zones. And within a couple of days, probably a week at most, you'll see the vast majority of those all gone. And every day, and you can go back and confirm this on Dune Analytics, every day that we had zone growth, that same growth that we had 1 year ago will be a subtracting moving forward on July 22nd. That will be the self-pruning mechanism of XETA Blue's ecosystem, with further improvements coming in 2.0 to be announced very, very soon. We have so much we're building. We have so much excitement. There's stuff even beyond 2.0 that we are working on and I can't talk about. It's just, you're going to love it. You are going to love it. And thank you so much for tuning in. This is June 2023. And I just appreciate all the new people. I appreciate all the existing people. I just appreciate everybody in the community. Thank you so much. Please give a shout out to our wonderful moderators in the Discord, including our new mod, Marcus, as well as JT, who does a wonderful job. He's kind of like our quasi-mod, given that he answers a lot of questions as well, but he's our content specialist, and we love all of our mods and JT. So please, if you appreciate them, please let them know and tag them in the Discord. I know they'd appreciate it. Follow us on Twitter, XETA Capital on Twitter. Subscribe to our YouTube, XETA Capital on YouTube. Join our Discord. You'll find that at xetacapital.com. Scrolling down and seeing the Discord icon, we have just under 2,000 people in there. It's growing. A lot of new people, a lot of existing people. We love you all. We really appreciate everybody in our community. And we thank you for tuning into June 2023. Before you know it, we will be celebrating our 1 year anniversary with XETA Capital. That's a big deal. Very few projects are around for 1 year. There's only one other project I can think of, and the only reason it was around for more than a year was because very few knew about it for quite some time. But we are, coming up kind of sort of last year on the end of the whole DeFi season with a lot of projects that, unfortunately hurt a lot of people. So we came around in a very interesting time, but here we are a year later, and we will be celebrating that 1 year very shortly. And next month, we will be doing our July Zone Monthly in August 2023 as we actually surpass the 1 year anniversary, we'll have a lot of very interesting statistics just on the 1 year, in addition to the month itself. We appreciate you tuning in. We will see you next time. And until then, take care. God bless. Thanks a lot.